What's up, folks? We're heading into 2022 and it's time for a top 10 list. So let's skip the disclaimers and get right into it. My number 10, Jasco's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is like a sort of an area control, action selection game. It's referred to by some people as like an Arkham Horror Light, but I think of it more in the Pandemic family. Basically what's going on is you've got demons and vampires popping up all over Sunnydale, and you are using your characters from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series to move around the city, take special actions, collect certain items, and rid the city of vampires and demons before they get out of hand. You're slowly taking out a few mini-bosses, take out the main boss that you've selected for the scenario, and you've won the game. It's really fun, but I think it's especially fun if you are familiar with the series and are a fan of it. I really enjoy imagining the characters in those situations. And but other than that, it is a very smooth, quick, snappy kind of game, and I have a great time playing it. So I highly recommend Jasco's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. My number 9, Viticulture. A lot of people say that this is the greatest worker placement game of all time. I don't know if I agree with that, but I think that this is definitely a fantastic game, and it's got a cool light engine building mechanic where you're basically planting vines so that you can grow grapes, so you can harvest those grapes, so that you can turn those grapes into wine and use the wines to fill orders. One of the things that is especially intriguing about this game is that the grapes and the wines age and grow in value as turns pass along. So this is really a really interesting mechanic, and it forces you to think ahead and really make sure that you're timing things right so that you can fill your orders and have the next order set up and ready to go. Viticulture is a fascinating game. It's very, very fun. Stonemaier Games really made a jewel here. That's Viticulture. My number 8. Terraforming Mars. You've probably heard of this game once or twice. It's an amazing engine building game. This was my first foray into engine building. Probably a little heavy to be your first engine building game, but I got into it, fell in love with it. It's got a great solo mode, which is practically the same as playing head-to-head. It is all about building up your engine, getting a little bit more every turn, and setting off chain reactions. Chain reactions are probably my favorite mechanic in games, and Terraforming Mars is chock full of them. This game gives and gives and gives. It is very, very fun. I highly recommend getting the Prelude expansion and playing with that. If you're just going to buy the game, just get the Prelude expansion right away. It speeds up the game. It makes it a little bit easier to develop your strategy in the beginning, and just moves the game along. So definitely Terraforming Mars with Prelude, my number 8. At number 7, we've got a game that I sadly do not own. My buddy Blake owns it. It is by the great Daniel Taschini, and it is Teotihuacan, City of Gods. Teotihuacan is an interesting dice game because you do not roll the dice. The dice, as you move them, grow in value and then reset. You're moving the dice around the board to take particular actions to build up a pyramid in the center or move up certain tracks. It's a classic Euro in that fashion. It is a brilliant game. It is thinky, it is challenging, and it is very, very, very fun. Teotihuacan, City of Gods, my number 7. So let's move on to my number 6. The great Orleon. Orleon is a bag building Euro. It is a fantastic, fantastic game where you are basically using your own worker placement board. So there's no contention over the spots. You're using your own board, you're moving your guys, putting them out there to get more workers of different types, or to take specific actions, or to move around a map. You're moving around a map, you're building buildings, and you're scoring points in that way. This is kind of a point salad game, moving up tracks, similar to Teotihuacan, very Euro, but with a bag building base. And I highly recommend getting the Geek Up bits. These are nice, heavy plastic bits, and they are very, very nice. You can check on my channel. I have a little ASMR edition video talking about this upgrade, and I love these bits. I think they're imperative. So definitely get the bits. Definitely check out Orleon. It's a fantastic, fantastic bag building Euro, and it's my number 6. At number 5, wow, when it comes to worker placement, Abomination is a true achievement. And what is sad about this game is it is terribly, terribly, terribly underrated, terribly underplayed. The reason being is that this is an extremely gruesome game. It is a gruesome concept, and it contains gruesome art. It is not for the faint of heart. It is not for little kids. But the worker placement mechanism in this game with the multi-spot locations, all the locations are kind of split into different sections. And it's just that's a really, really interesting mechanic. And also, all along, as you're going through the game, you are building your own monster, part by part, and putting the parts together, and putting skin on the parts, and shocking those parts to life. It is an incredibly satisfying game. It is a challenging game. It is fun, but it is gruesome. So anybody with the stomach to handle it, I highly, highly recommend it, especially for horror fans. But it is, even if you're not normally into horror, I really recommend you giving this game a shot, because it is very, very interesting, and you're not going to hear much about it. Very fun game. Abomination, my number 5. All right, well, here's where the decisions start getting really, really, really tough. Okay, my number 4 is just absolutely my obsession right now. This game is brilliant for storytelling. It is one of the best thematic games ever made, I believe. It is Ignacy Trzewiczek's Robinson Crusoe Adventures on a Cursed Island. This game is so, so good. It takes you on an adventure where you are desperately clinging to life, trying to survive on a desert island and protect yourself, build shelter, and avoid the weather. There are about 5 or 6 different scenarios in the game. They are all different, but they work from the same basic game system. If you have seen the game First Martians, it is the same basic system with a few tweaks, and this game put on Mars. Just got it, super excited about it, and I will be putting up a video about that sometime soon, hopefully. Robinson Crusoe. Give this game a shot. It is so brilliant. The stories are fantastic. It really puts you in the world. And the best dice in my collection. I love the dice in this game. Check out Robinson Crusoe, my number 4. Number 3, possibly one of the greatest games ever made. In my opinion, it is Photosynthesis. When people talk about elegant games, games that do a lot with very little and have deep strategy but low complexity, Photosynthesis is the epitome. It is an amazing game. The sun is moving around the board, and you are growing your trees, and you're using that sunlight as points to grow more trees, to build up the trees that you have grown. And all along, you're trying to block your opponents from getting the sunlight that should be going to your trees. You use that sunlight to plant more, to grow more, and to block more. It is super tactical. Every turn the board changes, and by the end of the game, you truly have a beautiful little spectacle on the board. Photosynthesis is elegant. It is fun. It is an amazing, amazing design. This is what board games are all about. Definitely check out Photosynthesis. My number 3. My number 2 is my favorite deck building game, Ascension. Ascension is pretty much a straightforward deck building game. You have two types of currency that you're working with the base game. You have two types of currency. You have runes, which are like your money, and then you have attack power. So the attack power is going to be there's a central market where these cards start coming out in the heroes and other cards that you can buy, and there are enemies that you can attack. So you are using these basic cards. If you don't know how deck building works, you basically start with a deck of 10 cards that are very weak. You're going to use those cards to buy other cards that are going to make your deck more powerful. And then there are a few cards in this game that allow you to cull stuff. So you can take cards that are clogging up your deck and get rid of them permanently. So Ascension, every time you play, you start to learn there are new strategies, there are new ways to win, and it is infinitely an interesting game. When you start getting into the expansions and you start adding the insight, insight is another type of currency that you can use in a different type of market. And Ascension just expands out and expands out, has all types of different mechanics. So if you like deck building, there is some version of Ascension that you will like. Ascension, my number 2, brilliant deck builder. And my number 1, probably of all time, my most played game, if you include the app, and it is possibly the best design I've ever seen. Pandemic. The best version of this game is actually the Legacy version, Pandemic Season 1. That I just recently played. I haven't played Season 2 or Season 0 yet, but I plan to. Season 1 was an incredible, incredible, jaw-dropping experience. If you don't know what a legacy game is, legacy games basically have permanent changes. So you're putting stickers on the board, you're tearing up cards, and the world is slowly changing as you play through game after game after game. In the legacy version, you play between 12 and 24 games, depending on how often you win. And it is just an incredible, incredible experience. But what you're doing in Pandemic is basically there are 4 diseases that are taking over the world. Those diseases are the incidents are symbolized by cubes. Those cubes are 4 different colors, and they're popping up all over the city. If one particular city gets 3 cubes in it and gets hit again, 1 cube of that color goes to every connected city. So there are outbreaks, and these outbreaks then get a point. And if you have too many of those outbreaks, you lose. If you run out of player cards, you lose. The only way to win the game is to cure all 4 diseases. You do that by collecting 5 cards of that color and then going to a research station and curing that disease. The game is constantly changing. It's like the board is alive. It just spreads out, and you're trying to mitigate this outbreak of disease, and meanwhile trying to collect these cards and cure the diseases before you just run out of time. It is a really, really fun game. It's got a great app. It is my number 1 of all time. Well, thank you very much, folks. Thank you for your time. If you can, like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. But most importantly, please join in the conversation. Comment below. Let me know what you think of the list, what you think of these games. Do you agree with some? Do you disagree with some? And what is your top 10 list? Thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate your time. Have a great day.